Namaskar. Today we are going to talk about life processes of living beings. You can easily make out a living being from a non-living thing. How can you do that? Because there are a large number of processes which living beings need for survival, and some of them are nutrition, respiration, circulation and excretion. And in fact, these are the 4 topics that we are going to talk about today. What is nutrition? Nutrition begins from the intake of food. We need food for getting energy to have other processes go on, and therefore, food becomes absolutely necessary. Don't you know that an hungry man is an angry man? So, in the body there are hunger pangs, and we eat when we do not have enough energy in the body. So, nutrition is very important. The second and very important, without which we cannot survive even for a second, is respiration. You all know that all living things take in oxygen from the air or from the water. Those who live in water take oxygen from water, and many of course aquatic animals come up to take oxygen from air, but without taking in air, that is oxygen from the air, it is not possible to oxidize food and get energy at all. So, nutrition, respiration, and then what happens to this food that we take in? What happens to the energy? What happens to the waste that is all created in the body? All that is taken from the tissues or sent into the tissues, so that all tissues can survive, all cells of tissues can survive, and this is possible only through the process which is known as circulation. And lastly, of course, there is a lot of waste generated when we take in oxygen, and that oxygen helps to oxidize food. What do we get? We get a lot of carbon dioxide in return, and this carbon dioxide, if it is left inside the body, will be toxic to the body, will be like a poison. Therefore, it has to be removed. Similarly, the proteins that we eat, they get converted into substances like ammonia and urea, which go out with our urine. Now, this process is called excretion. Therefore, to sum up, the objectives of this lesson, this talk, are to know about 1. Nutrition, 2. Respiration, 3. Circulation, and 4. Excretion. Let us take them up one by one. Now, what is nutrition? Nutrition is that life process which helps us to take in certain nutrients that the body requires. So, here we have 2 things to pay our attention to. Number 1, what is food? What are nutrients in the food? And number 2, how is it that we take in food? And of course, then how is this food oxidized, and how is the oxidized product used? How are the end products of the large chunks of food that we eat absorbed in the blood and then sent to all parts of the body? And then how is the waste removed from the body? Let us see, we were talking about nutrition. Now, in nutrition, to begin with, we must know what are the nutrients. When you eat dal or chana or peas, what do you take in? You take in protein. Why? They are made up of a lot of protein. So, protein is a nutrient. When you eat a chapati or you eat some rice or potatoes, many of us love potatoes, and then what happens? Which nutrient are we taking in? We are taking in carbohydrates. When we take a little bit of ghee, we put some tadka, put some little jeera into the ghee and take boiled alus and make it, that ghee also goes into our body. And what does ghee or oil or butter or milk have? They have the third nutrient I wish to tell you about, and that is fats. And lastly, green vegetables are so very important because they contain large number of vitamins and minerals. You must have learned in the earlier classes that some of this food, the nutrients in the food like protein, are used up to build up tissues and build up cells. So, they are used for building up structures in the cells. What are carbohydrates used for? Both carbohydrates as well as fats are used for getting energy. When they are oxidized, a lot of energy is produced and the body is able to carry out large number of life processes. And what do fats and oils do, and butter, milk? They also provide energy. In fact, they provide more energy than carbohydrates do. And lastly, I was talking about vitamins. Vitamins are mostly found in the vegetables. For example, carrots, you get a lot of vitamin A in it. You have many other vegetables which have vitamin B. You have all these citrus fruits which have vitamin C. Lime or nimbu, it has vitamin C, which is really very, very good and helps us to not catch any cold. Then we have fourthly vitamin D, and I want to tell you that vitamin D is very, very important because it is used in the absorption of calcium, which helps to make our bones. It is really unfortunate that we hardly ever sit in the sun. In earlier times, people used to have lot of sun, they would sit in sunlight and take the sun, which would help their body to make a lot of vitamin D. So, A, B, C, D are the major vitamins, but we also have vitamin K, vitamin E and so on. Then let us talk about minerals. Minerals, for example, iodine, minerals, for example, iron. You know that when you have an apple, we say we get a lot of iron from there. And what does iron do? It helps us build our blood. What does iodine do, which is present a lot in green, leafy vegetables, saag, what we call in Hindi. And then iodine is very important for making the hormone which is made by the thyroid gland. That is why you are given iodized salt, so that you have enough iodine in your body to build up the hormone thyroxine. Then we can also talk about sodium and potassium. Why do we have common salt? Sodium chloride. So, sodium chloride gives us sodium, banana gives us potassium, and you all know that sodium and potassium are very, very necessary for our brain to function, for our nerves to function, and therefore, our diet should be complete with nutrients. Let me tell you, we love eating noodles and pasta and pizza, which have so much of carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates do give energy, but they also make us fat, because whatever extra carbohydrate is left in the body, it gets converted into fat. Therefore, please remember that we must have a balanced diet with all the nutrients in the right proportion. And mind you, our Indian thali is really balanced. See, chapatis and rice give us carbohydrates, dal gives us adequate protein, vegetables give us the requisite amount of minerals, and vitamins, and little ghee or little oil gives us the fat which is needed by the body. So, please remember, when your mother asks you to eat the regular khana or the regular food, regular meal, please do not decline it. Do not only have noodles and pizza. Okay, having talked about nutrients, I would like to tell you now, food is needed by all living organisms. So, there are various modes of feeding. What are they? They are in plants, the method is photosynthesis, and they make their own food. You all know that plants make their own food, and this food making by themselves is called autotrophic. So, plants are autotrophs. Auto means self and trophs means trophos rather means nutrition. What about animals? Animals either eat plants or eat other animals. So, they are heterotrophs. Hetero means different, trophos means feeding. Then there are saprotrophs. See, nature is so great, even the dead decaying matter is eaten up by certain kinds of living beings. For example, bacteria and the fungi, they eat up dead decaying matter and remove it from the earth, remove it from the soil. That is such a good thing to do. They are known as saprotrophs. So, plants autotrophs, animals heterotrophs, fungi and bacteria saprotrophs. Now, let us see what do the autotrophs do. Autotrophs, you all know, I just told you that they make their food with the help of photosynthesis, and you know that the significance of photosynthesis is really large, because directly or indirectly all other living beings live on food made by the plants. Now, how does photosynthesis take place? The name itself tells you, photos means light, and with light the plants make their food, and the energy required to make food by the plants is supplied by sun, or even if you keep a plant in a room, in a dark room, but if you have the lights on, still it will be able to make its food, because the source of energy is there. Light is the source of energy, and food, you all know, is made by plants in their green parts, especially leaves. Why in the leaves? Because leaves have their cells which contain organelles called chloroplasts, and chloroplasts have the capacity to capture solar energy and then use it to convert carbon dioxide and water, which again the plant has to procure, into glucose, and then this glucose the plants are able to store as starch. So, if you see the equation for photosynthesis, it is CO2 plus H2O in the presence of light and chlorophyll gives C6H12O6, which is glucose and a lot of energy. So, photosynthesis is necessary, and photosynthesis provides us, all living beings on earth, with food. Another very big usefulness of photosynthesis is that when photosynthesis takes place, lot of oxygen is given out. Where does this oxygen go? It goes into the atmosphere, and then it is utilized by all living beings for respiration. Also, I want to tell you, listeners and learners, that the plants take in carbon dioxide. You know, the leaves take in carbon dioxide with the help of their stomata from air for making the glucose, and therefore, today we talk of global warming due to the accumulation of so much carbon dioxide in the air. That carbon dioxide, if it is taken up by plants, it is removed from the atmosphere. That is why forests are known as carbon sink, and we have gotten rid of the forests. Therefore, please remember, if you can plant a tree, it will be of help to the whole world. Having talked about plant nutrition and its significance, let us see what do the animals eat. I just told you that animals are heterotrophic because they eat either plants or other animals. Now, this kind of nutrition is also known as holozoic nutrition, in which the other things are eaten, food is not prepared by oneself, and then there are a number of processes involved in animal nutrition. Intake of food, you just take food, you get cooked food, eat it, and that is called ingestion. So, first process in nutrition of animals is ingestion, then it goes into our alimentary canal and gets digested. So, that is digestion. Then after it is digested, it goes, the digested product, which is much simpler than the complex food, goes into our circulation, and either lymph, which is a fluid in our body, or blood carries it to all the cells. Now, proteins split into amino acids, carbohydrates split into glucose, fats split into fatty acids and glycerol, and all of these are carried to the various tissues for utilization and for being oxidized and for getting energy. Now, having absorbed this food, the cells actually utilize them, and that is called assimilation. And whatever is left behind, every morning we go and remove it from our body, that is called egestion. So, nutrition involves 5 processes: ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and removal of waste, which is called egestion. Having done this, let us come to the saprotrophic nutrition. I told you that mushrooms and bacteria, they degrade dead decaying matter, which is all they secrete certain secretions on them, and then these secretions dissolved all that which they take in and utilize as their own food. Now, having talked about heterotrophic nutrition, I also want to tell you that heterotrophic nutrition has certain animals eating only plant food, only vegetarian food, and they are called herbivores. Those that eat other animals are called carnivores. The cat, the tiger, the dog, they eat flesh, they are called carnivores, and those which live on other animals or other plants, either outside the body of their host or inside the body, like the tapeworm, like the lice in our hair, they are called parasites. So, animals may be either herbivores or carnivores or parasites. Now, let us talk about vitamins and minerals a little more now. We talked about proteins, carbohydrates, fats. Now, minerals are known as protective foods, and so are vitamins known as protective foods. Why? Because if there is deficiency of either the vitamins or the minerals, certain disorders or diseases come up. For example, if you do not take in enough vitamin A, I just told you that vitamin A is found largely in carrots and many other yellow fruits, also in pumpkin, etc. And if we do not eat that enough, we get a disease or a disorder called xerophthalmia, night blindness. Then you can't see better in darkness. Similarly, deficiency of vitamin B causes beriberi. Vitamin C, its deficiency causes what is known as scurvy, and vitamin D deficiency causes rickets in children and osteomalacia in the adults, the elder people. So, these are deficiency disorders, and there are many deficiency disorders caused by mineral deficiency also. For example, I told you thyroid will not make its hormones if there is not enough iodine in the body. The red blood cells and hemoglobin will not be made if there is not enough iron in the body. Similarly, if calcium and phosphorus are not enough in the body, then the bones and the teeth will start degrading and start breaking off and becoming fragile. So, please remember that two things are really necessary to keep good health: taking good nutrition, and number two, doing enough exercises. Now, let me tell you about some of the nutritional disorders which are caused due to protein deficiency. Now, once we take in food, once it is digested, how will it go to the different parts? I just told you that it will have to be transported or circulated into the body. So, transportation or circulation is that life process which all living things carry out, irrespective of whether they are plants or animals, so that the digested food or the food goes to different cells and tissues. Number two, oxygen taken in for respiration goes to different tissues, and three, waste is removed from the tissues. In plants, the tissues responsible for carrying out transportation of water and minerals is xylem. We did xylem when we did building blocks of life, and in plants where do plants take water and minerals from? They take it from the soils. So, you very well can imagine that the function of the roots, the root hairs, is to take up water and minerals from the soil and send it up. So, it actually moves in one direction and goes up, and the walls are thick so that it does not leak out, and it goes up to the leaves so that leaves can utilize water along with carbon dioxide to make food. Now, once food is made, then what will happen? Once food is made in the body of the plants, it has to go to each and every part of the plant. Now, how does that happen? That happens with the help of tissues called phloem. Phloem tissue, actually the transport is two-way, unlike the xylem where it goes only from below upwards, from soil towards the leaves on top, and here the food goes to all the parts of the plant body, and this taking or transport of food in plants is called translocation, and I just told you it is done by the tissues named phloem. Now, within the plant body, this work of xylem and phloem to send in water and prepared food to all parts is known as the ascent of sap. Sap is actually a fluidy part which has dissolved substances, and that is how it is sent up. Ascent means going up. So, food, water and minerals, when they go up on to the top of the plant, the tip of the plant, we call it ascent of sap. Now, what happens in animals or say the humans? We have our heart and all the blood vessels for this function of transportation. Heart is a pump, you all know, and what happens is that heart pumps the blood such that it can get the deoxygenated blood, or the blood without any oxygen goes to the heart in order to go to the lungs to go out. Let me again explain you and simplify it a little more. See, heart is a pump which has a cardiac cycle of constantly, alternately and rhythmically contracting and relaxing. You all know it has 4 chambers, the right and the left atria or auricles. Auricles is actually the covering of the atria, the chambers are the atria and the 2 ventricles. So, 2 auricles or atria and 2 ventricles. Now, what happens is, say your right hand, just think of your right hand, from the right side in the right auricle, veins. What are veins? They are blood vessels which have a very thin wall and they carry deoxygenated blood. This deoxygenated blood comes to the heart. So, the vessels which carry blood from different parts to the heart are the veins. So, veins bring them, in fact, there are 2 large veins, they bring them to the right auricle. From right atrium, it goes to the right ventricle, from right ventricle to the lungs, there it gets oxygenated. Okay? Now, but there you see that it is called the pulmonary artery, because arteries are those vessels, they are thick walled vessels which actually carry blood from the heart to the different parts. So, having then having been oxygenated in the lungs, it goes to the from the lungs to the left atrium, the left ventricle, and this oxygenated blood then goes to all the different tissues of the body. Let me tell you that blood is such a beautiful fluid. It has the plasma and the cells, the red blood cells have hemoglobin which carries oxygen, the white blood corpuscles protect us from outside germs, and there are little platelets which are actually pieces of cytoplasm without any nuclei which help in clotting the blood, otherwise we would bleed to death. Now, you all know that the heart, if it is working normally, it produces a certain curve, certain spikes, PQRST we name them, and it can be read from what is known as the ECG. ECG is electrocardiogram, which is the graph obtained, and electrocardiograph is the machine, ECG machine, which actually measures the working of the heart. And of course, that when blood puts a pressure on the arteries, it is called blood pressure. You can see it on the wrist, you can see it on the neck, and this which is called the pulse. The doctor sees your pulse, he sees actually the radial artery, how much pressure the blood is putting, and that is read with a blood pressure instrument. Now, we get digital blood pressure instruments which is known as sphygmomanometer. Now, let us talk about respiration. How does respiration take place? In plants, there are little holes called stomata surrounded by guard cells, and when the guard cells get filled up with fluid, the stomata or the openings open, air rushes in, and when they become flaccid or when they do not have enough fluid, they are not turgid, the guard cells, then the stomata opens. So, it opens both for intake of air, oxygen, and also for removing the carbon dioxide from the plant body. So, this is how exchange of gases takes place in plants. In animals, that, say for example, humans, we have a respiratory system, our nostrils, then the windpipe after going through the pharynx, then bronchi leading into the lungs. You can see the picture in your PowerPoint presentation, and this is called breathing. When we inhale air, we call it inhalation. How does it happen? There is a partition between our thorax and the abdomen called diaphragm. The diaphragm contracts, the thoracic cavity becomes big, and according to the physics principles, whenever volume is increased, then what happens is that pressure decreases and outside air rushes in. when the diaphragm again relaxes, then the thoracic cavity becomes less in volume and carbon dioxide goes out. Then all the air, this oxygen reaches the capillaries and to the different parts, and there in the cells what is known as cellular respiration takes place, oxygen is utilized and carbon dioxide is given out. Now, lastly we talk about excretion or removal of the waste. In plants really not much is known about excretion, except that there are certain secretions in plants, and probably the secretions have waste removed from the body. In animals or in humans, the kidneys are responsible for forming the urine. What does formation of urine means? It simply means removing the waste product into urine and from the blood, and or sending back all the useful substances which also sometimes comes out with urine back into blood. Now, this excretion is removal of nitrogenous and other soluble wastes in our body in the form of urine. We have two kidneys. One kidney is a little lower than the other kidney, the right one, because of the large liver which is above it, and then from the kidneys start ureters or pipes through which urine comes out, stored in the urinary bladder, and then through the urethra it goes out. In men, there is only a single passage which through which sperms also go out and urine also goes out. And I just want to tell you that the unit of kidney is a nephron, and there are about 1 million nephrons, and that is why even if a person does not have one kidney and the other kidney is functional, it helps. But once kidneys fail to function, then either dialysis, which is removing the blood and cleaning it, it is called artificial kidneys, or a kidney transplant has to be carried out. So much for the life processes. Please see all the pictures and try to correlate the pictures with the little text or points that are written there, and study nutrition, respiration, circulation and excretion. Thank you.